The night I found out my best friend had been sleeping with my wife, he was sitting at my kitchen table eating the chili I had made from scratch. That detail still gets me. The chili. I had spent 40 minutes browning the meat, adding the spices in the right order the way my grandfather taught me, letting it simmer low because, he always said, you could not rush good things. And there was Dominic, my best friend since 7th grade, sitting in my chair, eating my food, wearing the particular expression of a man who does not know yet that his whole cover story is about to collapse. I did not say anything right away. I set my work bag down on the counter. I poured myself a glass of water. I asked him how the drive over had been. He said fine, light traffic for a Tuesday. My wife, Serena, no. I need a different name. My wife Cassie was moving around the kitchen putting dishes away, and I stood there watching both of them, holding my water glass, thinking about a voicemail I had just listened to in the car. Let me back up. My name is Nathan Holt. I am 36 years old. I work as a structural engineer for a mid-sized firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have been told I am calm to the point of being unnerving. My mother used to say I was born with a thermostat where other people have nerves. My ex-wife used to say the same thing, except she did not mean it as a compliment by the end. Dominic Reyes had been my best friend since we were both 12 years old, and got assigned lockers next to each other in middle school. 24 years. He was the best man at my wedding. He knew every embarrassing story I had from every decade of my life. And I knew all of his. We had driven across the country together after college. We had been in the room when each other's parents got bad news from doctors. When his father died of a stroke in 2019, I took a week off work and flew to Tampa without him even asking. That is the kind of friendship I am talking about, not the text each other on birthdays kind. The show up at the airport at midnight kind. Cassie and I had been married for 5 years when this started. We met through mutual friends at a brewery event in uptown Charlotte. One of those crowded Saturday afternoon things where you're supposed to sample flights and talk about hops. But mostly you're just trying to find somewhere to stand. She had dark hair, and the specific kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly what she wants. She laughed at my terrible beer flight jokes. I liked that about her more than I should have admitted on a first meeting. We dated for 2 years before getting married. Dominic gave the toast at our rehearsal dinner and made everyone in the room cry laughing, with a story about a camping trip we took at 19, where I had confidently told him I knew how to read a trail map, and then gotten us lost for 6 hours. Cassie looked at him from across the table, like he was a part of the family she had always been missing. I remember thinking it was nice that my two favorite people liked each other so much. I should have clocked that earlier. The problems in our marriage were real, but they were not dramatic. I worked long hours. Cassie was in pharmaceutical sales and traveled 3 or 4 days most weeks. We were often in the same house without being in the same room. She said I went quiet when I was under pressure, and that it felt like living with a closed door. I said she sometimes treated our home like a hotel she happened to share with someone she knew. We were both right. We were both wrong. We had tried one session of couples counseling before Cassie said it felt performative and stopped going. I do not want to stand here and paint myself as the perfect husband because I was not. But I was faithful. I came home. I fixed things when they broke. I showed up. I thought that was the floor, not the ceiling. I did not know the floor could still collapse. The voicemail. I had been driving home from a project site in Concord when my phone rang. I did not recognize the number. Usually, I let unknown numbers go to voicemail, but something made me answer. A woman's voice, low and careful. Like she had rehearsed what she was going to say, but was still not sure it was the right decision. She said her name was Marta. She said she was Dominic's girlfriend of 8 months. She said she had found messages on his phone. She said she was sorry, and that she had gone back and forth about calling me for 3 weeks. She said she did not think I deserved to find out the way she had found out, which was alone on a Tuesday night scrolling through his texts while he slept. Then she said, "It has been going on for at least a year, maybe more. He talked about your wife like she was his." I pulled into a gas station parking lot on Highway 49 and sat there for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 because I kept looking at the clock. There was a man filling his truck 2 pumps over, a teenager inside through the glass, counting change at the register. Everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. Everything was perfectly ordinary. And I was sitting there holding a phone that had just rearranged the last year of my life without asking. Then I drove home. And that is when I walked in and found Dominic eating my chili. The specific cruelty of it is something I still think about. He was not hiding. He was not nervous. He had come over because he came over. He came over like he always did. He had a key to my house. He had a key to my house because I trusted him. I sat down across from him at the table. I said, "So how's Marta?" The spoon stopped moving. Cassie went still at the counter. Dominic looked up at me. He had always been good under pressure. He was the kind of guy who stayed calm in traffic, in arguments, in poker games. But something in his face shifted in a way I had never seen before. Just a flicker. Just a second. She's good, he said. Why? She called me about 40 minutes ago. The kitchen was very quiet. The refrigerator made its low hum. Dominic set his spoon down slowly. Cassie turned around. She had a dish towel in her hand and she was gripping it the way people grip things when they need something to hold onto. Nathan, she said. I looked at her. Don't use my name like that. You use my name like that when you're about to manage me. She pressed her lips together. How long? I asked. Neither of them answered. Dominic. I looked directly at him. How long? He exhaled through his nose. That exhale. 24 years of friendship, and I had never once seen him look ashamed in front of me. Now he looked like a man waiting for a verdict he had known was coming. Nathan, it's complicated, he said. I almost laughed. Complicated. The universal password for cowards. I had a structural engineering professor in college who used to say that complexity was either honest or lazy. It was honest when the problem was genuinely difficult, and lazy when someone did not want to do the math. Dominic was not doing the math. It is not complicated, I said. Complicated is a zoning dispute. Complicated is a mortgage with a balloon payment. This is just a choice you made and then made again. Cassie stepped toward me. I can explain, you can explain later. Right now I am asking him. Dominic looked at the table. About a year and a half. The number sat between us. A year and a half. That meant it had started 5 months into our marriage. That meant every weekend the three of us had spent together, every holiday, every dinner, every time he had shown up here and hugged me at the door, had been inside that year and a half. Everything in the last 18 months had been built on something I did not know about. Get out of my house, I said. Dominic stood, he did not argue. That was almost worse. I had wanted him to argue. I had wanted something to push against. He picked up his jacket from the back of my chair. My chair, he said. Nathan, I'm sorry. I said, you're sorry you got caught. That is not the same thing. He left. Cassie and I stood in the kitchen. The chili was still on the stove. I could smell the cumin and the smoked paprika my grandfather used to use. I turned the burner off. Tell me, I said. She told me. It had started at a fundraiser happy hour I had missed because of a deadline. Dominic had come without me. They had both had too much to drink. She said it started as a mistake. I told her that one time could be a mistake. 18 months is a decision you keep making. She started crying. She said she had wanted to end it but did not know how. She said she had felt invisible in our marriage. She said Dominic made her feel seen. Each sentence was a different kind of hit. Not because they were designed to hurt, but because some of them were true. I had been distracted. I had been closed off. I could be hard to reach. But I had never reached for someone else. I went to the guest room that night. I did not sleep much. Around 2 a.m, Dominic texted me. I need you to hear my side of this. I put my phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling for a long time. There was no side. In the morning I called my sister. Her name is Priya. No, that name is on the list. Her name is Sloan. She is 4 years older than me and lives in Raleigh. And has always been the person I call when I do not know what to do next. She picked up on the second ring, which is her way of saying I am already paying attention. I told her everything. She was quiet through most of it. When I finished, she said, tell me what you need. Not that monster, or how dare he, or what did Cassie say. Just, tell me what you need. That is the right sister to have when your life is on fire, I said. I need to know if my parents knew. She went quiet, in a different way. Sloan. Nathan, I don't know anything for certain. What do you know that isn't certain? Another pause. She said. Mom mentioned to me about 2 months ago that she thought Cassie and Dominic seemed close. I told her she was projecting. I didn't think anything of it. I put the call on speaker and set the phone on the bathroom counter and looked at my reflection for a long time. Did you ever bring it up with Mom again? I asked. Sloan hesitated. She called me last month and said she was worried about your marriage. She said she had noticed something at Easter that concerned her. Easter. I had been on a project call for part of Easter Sunday. I had stepped outside for 45 minutes. When I came back, Cassie and Dominic were in the sunroom and my mother was standing in the hallway, with an expression I had not understood at the time. And she didn't tell me. I said. Sloan's silence was an answer. I hung up and drove to my parents' house. My parents lived 20 minutes north of Charlotte in a house they had owned since 1991. My father, Ron, was a retired high school football coach who filled his days with golf and strong opinions. My mother, Beverly, Bev, she always said, nobody calls me Beverly, was the axis everything in our family orbited around. She had 6 siblings, was the youngest of them, and had absorbed from childhood the specific skill of keeping peace in a room by absorbing conflict into herself. She was generous and warm, and could make anyone feel like the most important person in the room. That quality had an underside I was only beginning to understand. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She had seen my car in the driveway. Nathan, she said. You knew, I said. She stepped back from the door. I walked in. My father appeared from the kitchen with a mug in his hand. He looked at my face and set the mug down. My mother said, I was not sure. I didn't know for certain. But you suspected the couch. She pressed her palms against her knees the way she did was gathering herself. I saw something at Easter. Dominic touched her hand when you went outside. It was brief, maybe nothing. But it wasn't nothing. And you decided not to tell me. I decided to wait until I was sure. I did not want to blow up your marriage over a hunch. I looked at my father, he said. Your mother was trying to protect you. She was protecting my marriage at the cost of me. There is a difference. My mother's eyes filled up. Nathan, I have watched you love that woman for 7 years. I did not want to be the one to take that from you unless I was absolutely certain. Someone else took it from me. You just watched and said nothing. My father said, that's not fair to your mother. I turned to him, was it fair to me? He had no answer. My father was a man of strong opinions right up until the moment they cost him something. I sat down in the armchair across from my mother. For a long time we were both quiet. Did you tell Cassie you suspected? I asked. My mother's hands tightened on her knees. I asked her. She said quietly, I asked Cassie directly about a month ago. I told her what I thought I had seen, and I told her she needed to end whatever it was before your father. Or, I said something, the room tilted slightly. You gave her a warning. My mother looked up. I gave her a chance to do the right thing. You gave her a month to keep lying to me. I gave her a chance to fix it without destroying everything. I stood up. You kept me in the dark so she could stay in my house and keep lying to my face. That is what you did. My mother started crying. My father crossed his arms. He said, your mother was in an impossible position. There was not a position, I said. There was a choice. And she made it. She chose to manage the information instead of giving it to the person it belonged to. I picked up my keys. My mother said, Nathan, please, you're in shock. Don't make decisions right now. I stopped at the door. I am not in shock. I am very, very clear. The thing I am most clear about right now is that 3 made choices to protect each other. And none of those choices were made to protect me. I left before she could answer. The next few days were the mechanical ones. I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Christine Albright. And she had an office off South Tryon Street. And the practiced stillness of someone who had heard every version of this story. She listened to me without interrupting. Then she said, first, do not move out of the marital home. Do not leave voluntarily. North Carolina's is an equitable distribution state, and you have rights as a co-owner. Second, document everything you can. Text records, bank records, any financial overlap between your wife and the third party. She paused. Third, get yourself tested. I'm sorry to have to say that. I nodded. I already knew. Cassie tried to talk to me every night that week. Some of it was apology. Some of it was explanation. One night she came into the guest room doorway and said, Dominic reached out to me. He wants to talk to you. He thinks if you could hear his side. I said if you let him into this house again, I will call a locksmith in front of you. She left and did not bring it up again. Dominic, for his part, oscillated between guilty silence and defensive outreach. He sent 3 long texts over 4 days. The first acknowledged what he had done and said he was sorry. The second started explaining the emotional state he had been in. And how difficult the last 2 years had been for him personally. The third said he hoped I could eventually understand that what he felt for Cassie was real. And that he did not intend for any of this to hurt me. That one I screenshotted and forwarded to Christine. My mother called every day. I did not answer. My father called once and left a voicemail. He said, Nathan, I know you're angry. I know you have every right to be. I just want you to know that we love you, and we hope you will not let this destroy your relationship with your family on top of everything else. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Sloane came to Charlotte on a Thursday with a casserole and no agenda. She sat with me in the kitchen. Not the dining table. I had stopped eating at the dining table, and we talked until midnight. At one point she said, do you think Mom was trying to manipulate the outcome? Or do you think she genuinely thought she was helping? I thought about it. I think she is so afraid of conflict that she turned my marriage into a problem she was managing so she would not have to experience the discomfort of delivering bad news. Sloane considered that. Yeah, she said, that's probably right. And it was still wrong. It was still wrong, I agreed. She stayed the night. In the morning she made coffee. She did not tell me what to do. She was just there. That mattered more than I knew how to say. 3 weeks after the phone call from Marta, I sat in Christine Albright's office and signed the initial divorce paperwork. Cassie had agreed not to contest. She had moved out the previous week to stay with a friend from work. Dominic, I heard through Sloane, had also ended things with Marta. Marta had not been surprised. That detail made me feel something complicated about the universe. Christine had also helped me draft a cease and desist letter to Dominic after his third text, and he had gone quiet. I did not hear from him again for several months. What I had not expected was my parents. My mother, faced with my silence, started talking. I learned this from my Aunt Judy, my father's sister, who lived in Greensboro, and had a healthy skepticism of sentimentality that I had always appreciated. Aunt Judy called me on a Saturday morning and said, without preamble, "Your mother is telling people that you are shutting the whole family out over a misunderstanding." I closed my eyes. "A misunderstanding?" She also said, "Dominic is struggling and that your reaction has been disproportionate." I took a breath. "What exactly did you hear?" Aunt Judy said, "I heard enough. Which is why I'm calling you instead of believing it." She asked if I wanted company. I said yes. She drove 2.5 hours from Greensboro that afternoon and arrived with a bottle of bourbon and a complete absence of softness about what my mother had done. She said, "Bev has spent 60 years making herself indispensable to everyone's emotional comfort. When that stops working, she rewrites the story. I love my sister-in-law, but I know her." That gave me language for something I had been trying to name. The Sunday dinner happened 3 weeks after I told Sloan. My mother organized it. She called it a family check-in, which is a phrase designed to sound low stakes while achieving maximum pressure. She invited my parents' neighbors, the Haverfield couple who had watched me grow up. She invited my Uncle Grayson and his wife. She invited 2 cousins. Sloan called me the night before and said, "She's building an audience. She wants witnesses." I said I knew. Sloan said, "Are you going?" I said yes. I brought a folder. The house looked the same as always. The same autumn wreath on the door that had been there since September. The same smell of pot roast and my father's coffee. My mother moved through the room doing what she always did, smoothing and patting and adjusting, making sure everyone had something to hold so nobody would hold her accountable. Dominic was not there. That surprised me. I had half expected my mother to have invited him, as a gesture of forced reconciliation. His absence told me something about what she understood she could and could not do in front of witnesses. Cassie was not there either. My mother came to me when I walked in. She put her hand on my arm and said, "Nathan, I'm so glad you came. I just want us to be able to talk like a family." I said, "Okay." She blinked. She had been expecting resistance. Ease made her more nervous, not less. She moved away to manage someone else. I waited until everyone had sat down and my father had said the approximate family grace he always said. And then I waited through the first pass of the pot roast, and then I opened the folder. My mother saw it from across the table. Her fork slowed. Uncle Grayson said, "What have you got there, Nathan?" I said, "Something I want people I respect to understand." My mother said, "Nathan, we don't need to, Mom." I said it gently. I was not angry anymore, or I was, but the anger had compressed into something much smaller and harder. "You invited everyone here. I think they can hear this." The table went quiet. Mrs. Haverfield, God bless her, put her fork down and looked at my mother with the steady attention of a woman who has watched a lot of family dinners over 60 years. I laid out the voicemail transcript first. I had written it down word for word the night Marta called, while I sat in that gas station parking lot. My mother knew I had done it because I am an engineer. I document things. That is what I do. "My wife had an affair with my best friend for approximately 18 months, I said. "I found out because his girlfriend called me." I placed the transcript on the table. Marta had found the messages herself. She decided I deserved to know. Uncle Grayson said, "Nathan, I had no idea." "I know you didn't." I placed the next page. This is a text exchange between my mother and my wife, from 5 weeks before I found out. My wife showed it to me when she moved out. She said she thought I should have it. I looked at my mother. She felt guilty. Whatever else she did, she felt guilty. My mother had gone very still. Aunt Judy looked at the text exchange. She read it in about 10 seconds, and then set it down with the deliberate care of someone who does not want to show their reaction in public. The exchange was short. My mother had written to Cassie, "I know something is going on. I need you to end it before this gets worse. Do not tell Nathan yet. Let me handle this the right way. Let me handle this the right way." My mother's version of the right way had been a month of silence. "You told her not to tell me," I said. My mother pressed her napkin against her mouth. "Mom," she said, "I was trying to give her the chance to fix it. You were trying to keep the peace by keeping me in the dark. And the peace you were keeping was not for me. It was for you. Because you cannot stand to be the person who delivers difficult news." Her eyes filled. "That is not who I am. It is exactly who you are. And I say that because I have watched it my whole life and I have always loved you anyway. But this time it cost me something real." My father said from the end of the table, "That is enough, Nathan." I looked at him. "Is it, Dad?" "Because I have been at enough of these dinners where something is wrong and nobody says it. Because nobody wants to be the one who makes Mom cry. And I am done with that." My father's jaw tightened. My Aunt Judy made a small sound that was not quite a laugh. My cousin Trent said quietly, "For what it's worth, Nathan, I think everyone in this room is on your side." My mother shook her head. "I am on his side. I have always been on his side." "Then be on my side out loud, not in private, not in messages, not after the fact. Out loud." The table was quiet for a long time. Then Mrs. Haverfield, who I had not expected to say anything because she rarely did, said, "Honey, he's right." My mother cried. I did not move to comfort her. That was the first time in my life I had sat across from my crying mother and not moved to comfort her. It felt like putting something down that I had been carrying for a long time without realizing it was mine to carry. My father looked at the table. I closed the folder. I said, "I am not here to punish anyone. I am here because you gathered people who know me, and told them a version of this that made my response sound like the problem. I want them to have the actual version, that is all." I stayed for the rest of dinner. That surprised everyone, including me. I ate pot roast. I spoke to my aunt and uncle. I helped Mrs. Haverfield find her coat when she left. I hugged Sloan in the kitchen while my mother washed dishes in silence. When I left, my father walked me to my car. He stood beside me in the driveway, hands in his pockets. He said, "I didn't know about the texts." "I know," I said. "That one is between me and Mom. She meant well, she always means well. That is not a substitute for doing right." He nodded slowly. For a minute neither of us spoke. He was older than I remembered him looking. The outdoor light caught the silver in his hair, in a way that made me think about how long I had been his son. And how little of that time had been honest. He said, "I could have done better by you. As a father." There were times I let things go because it was easier, and I told myself I was keeping the peace. He paused. I think I was keeping my own comfort. That was not a small thing for my father to say. He was not a man who looked directly at his own failures. I accepted it for what it was. "I know," I said. He put his hand on my shoulder for a second. Then he went inside. I got in my car and drove home. The divorce was finalized 7 months later. It was not clean, because nothing is, but it was cleaner than I had expected. Cassie and I had no children, which was its own specific grief I would not try to describe here. The house sold in 3 weeks. I moved into an apartment in the South End neighborhood, 7 blocks from a park where I started running in the mornings, because I needed something to do with my body that was not thinking. I did not hear from Dominic for almost 8 months. Then in March, I got an email, not a text, an email which told me he had thought about this. It was 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph said he was sorry, and this time it did not try to explain why. The second paragraph said he was going to therapy, and that he had understood something about his own pattern of behavior that he could not unknow, and that understanding it did not undo anything he had done. He said he was not asking for anything. He said he just wanted me to know. I read it 3 times. Then I typed 1 sentence back. "I got it." Then I closed the email and went for a run. I am not going to tell you that I forgave him in the cinematic way, where something releases in your chest and light hits the trees differently. It did not happen like that. What happened was slower and less satisfying. Some days I thought about him and felt the old anger, like a low-grade fever. Some days I thought about him and just felt tired. Some days, genuinely, I did not think about him at all. I think that last one is what forgiveness actually looks like, before the movies get to it. My mother and I found our way back to something. It took about 4 months of very careful, very deliberate conversation, most of it facilitated by Sloan, who is constitutionally incapable of letting the people she loves stay in separate rooms forever. My mother apologized twice. The first time, the apology was wrapped in so many explanations that it barely survived the packaging. The second time, she just said she had been wrong and she was sorry, and she did not expect me to immediately feel better. That second time I believed her. I do not trust her with information the way I used to. That is not cruelty. That is just what happens when you learn how someone handles hard news. You adjust what you give them. My father surprised me more than anyone. 3 months after the dinner, he drove to my apartment on a Saturday morning unannounced, which he had never done in my adult life. He brought a bag of coffee from the diner near their house, and sat at my kitchen table and we talked. For 3 hours. Not about Cassie, not about Dominic, but about him. About the choices he had made during my childhood when he had deferred to my mother's version of events, instead of forming his own. About the moment he had seen the texts at dinner, and felt something click into place that should have clicked years earlier. He said, "I kept waiting for someone to be wrong enough to make it easy to pick a side. And you showed me that. Waiting is itself picking a side." I thought about that for a long time afterward. I still think about it. My life now is not dramatically different from the outside. I still work. I still run. I bought an actually functional coffee maker for the first time in my adult life, which Sloan said was the most meaningful sign of recovery she had seen. I started dating again, after about a year, slowly, carefully. The first time a woman asked me about my previous marriage, I told her the medium-length version, which takes about 7 minutes. She listened without interrupting, and then said, "That's a lot of betrayal for one situation." I said yes. She said, "How are you doing with it?" And I found that I actually had an answer to that question, which is something I had not had for a long time. I do not hate Cassie. I stopped hating her, around the same time I stopped thinking about her every day. I do not know exactly when either of those things happened, which I think means they happened correctly. I do not hate Dominic. I hate what he did. Those are different things. And it took me a long time to feel the difference, rather than just say it. What I have come to understand, after all of it, is this. The people who love us are not always honest with us. Sometimes they are protecting themselves. Sometimes they are protecting us from things we needed to know. Sometimes the difference between those two things is so small they cannot see it clearly themselves. And learning how someone loves you, including the ways it falls short, does not mean you stop letting them love you. It means you stop being surprised by what they cannot give, and start valuing what they can. That is a harder thing to carry than anger. But it is lighter than the alternative. So was I wrong? For leaving? For not accepting any version of the explanation that turned 18 months of betrayal into something survivable? For sitting at my mother's dinner table and laying out every piece of paper I had instead of nodding and eating pot roast? And pretending the story she had told. Everyone was close enough. I do not think so. But I will tell you what I think actually mattered in the end. Not the divorce, not the folder, not any of the things I said or did not say. What mattered was the gas station parking lot on Highway 49. 11 minutes after Marta's call. When I sat in my car and felt the full weight of what was true, and made the decision to stay with the truth, instead of driving home and pretending I had not heard it. That choice did not feel brave. It felt like the only thing left. And sometimes that is enough.